Hi, I'm Beth. This video is going to be a yin yoga stretch plus a sleep story. So we'll do a few postures that will hold for a few minutes each, and then you'll get into a posture that you'll hold longer while I read a story, in this case a Greek story, that might help ease you into sleep. Let's get started. Have a chair or a couch or your bed. You might want to have a pillow or something on top of your chair if your chair is not soft. We're going to come to standing. So as you come to standing, face your chair, let your knees be soft. We're going to do a forward fold, or dangling as it's called in yin. So you're going to start to fold at the hips. We're going to let our body dangle over the chair. Now you can do this without support. I'll show you away from the chair and hold on to your elbows. Or the chair is here, so we can either let the top of our head rest, or let your arms rest and maybe your head on your arms. Now you can either have the forehead rest if that's comfortable. You might choose the top of your head, and your arms can be dangling or resting on the chair. So you want to take a few moments to set yourself up in a posture that you can hold for about a minute. And once you get into this pose, you can let your knees stay bent. Maybe play around with straightening the legs without locking the knees, if that brings a comfortable level of stretch and release to your hamstrings. We're definitely not trying to stretch maximally here. You can also choose to widen your feet and create more space for your forward fold. Let's take about 3 to 5 more breaths in this pose. And as you're ready to come up, use your hands. Let yourself come up to about the halfway place for a moment. You can draw your feet closer together if they were apart. And then help yourself all the way up, and we're going to come down to kneeling. So we're still going to use the chair or whatever piece of furniture you have. We're going to step 1 foot forward so it's on the outside of the chair, coming into a lunge shape in yin. This is called dragon. Now we have plenty of options here, so I'm going to review the options throughout. I encourage you to find an option and stay with it as we hold the pose. So we can also turn this into a forward fold by using our elbows, our hands on the chair. I'm going to scooch my back knee a little further away. So my back leg, my bent knee, is about at a 90-degree angle. You'll see that when I move it to the front when we switch sides. I'm trying to let my back hip just really sink and release to the floor with gravity. And then we'll stay here a little bit. So we're doing a number of stretches, kind of starting from the feet and working our way down to start to release physical tension from the body. And then we're incorporating this forward fold, because in yoga, forward folds are thought to be stimulating in a relaxing way. So stimulating your parasympathetic nervous system, that's your rest and digest system. It may or may not have that effect for you. That's why these practices are something you can try and see, is this a type of routine that helps you to ease into sleep? It might be a routine that simply helps your body physically relax at the end of a long day. You want to try to hold in yin postures at that Goldilocks place, so that place where the stretch feels just right, not too little, not too much. If it gets to be too much, you want to adjust, maybe come upright if you were leaned over. So let's be here a little bit longer. Yin postures you can hold anywhere from 2 minutes for ones that feel a little bit more intense, like the dangling that we started with and dragging pose. Ones that feel a little bit more relaxed, you may even hold longer, anywhere up to 5-10 minutes or more if you're comfortable in the pose and have found that place where you get to have a stretch of the target area without feeling like it's too much, that it's sustainable. Let's do one more breath on this side. We still want to have a relaxed, comfortable breath in the posture. Then we'll come back. You may wish to sit on your heels for a moment. And then we'll transition to the other side. So we start the same way, step the opposite foot forward. I'm just going to readjust my chair a little bit. I usually wind up tucking my toes to step my back knee back a little bit more. And your back toes can stay tucked if that's more comfortable. I like to have them relaxed. And then just like we did on the first side, you can decide where is the most comfortable amount of stretch for you. And the stretch in this pose is somewhere in this front hip area, the hip flexor. You may feel it in other places, but that's the target area for dragon pose in yin. You can take this forward like we did to have the release. Maybe you hang forward even more, finding that space between your knee and the chair. And then another little tidbit that you can play around both in your yin and your yang postures is changing where the back leg is. So we tend to have the foot straight behind the back knee. If I internally rotate so that my foot comes out, my hip is internally rotating the socket, I feel the stretch very differently on my front hip flexor. Same thing if I externally rotate so that my hip is opening up a little bit more. It shifts where I feel that stretch. You get to choose. It's your body. You can change how you feel the stretch as warranted for you. Let me go back to center for this last little bit in this pose. You'll see I'm wearing my socks today. If we were doing a standing practice, I'd recommend being barefoot on your mat. When we're easing into going from standing to floor, not really doing a lot of standing work, keeping your feet warm, socks are fine. All right, last breath. You have the chair to help ease yourself out of the pose. And once again, you can rest for a moment. Maybe you rest in a standing kneeling. Perhaps you come down to your knees for a moment. A little bit of break between yin poses is called the rebound. It gives us a moment to notice the effects of the poses on our body. All right, so next pose we're going to move into what's called open heart or melting heart in yin. It's also a yang posture, and you'll see that there's a lot of overlap between yin and yang. Here again, we're going to use the chair as an elevation for our arms so that we can open our back body. So our front body is melting, that's the melting heart. Our back body is stretching. Using the chair helps this to be a gentle back bend rather than a more significant one. Gentle back bends can help us move toward stretching, toward relaxation, where more intense back bends sometimes are overly stimulating and activated. So I'm walking my knees back, my hips are going to stay over my knees, Either my forearms or my elbows will be on the chair, and I'll show both ways. I'll start with my forearms, and then I just let my body melt. So my head is coming between the arms. Once I find a position, I can let go of my head. I don't have to hold it up. So I'm engaging a little bit between the shoulder blades. My shoulder blades are drawing together a little bit, and that's allowing me to stretch across the armpits, across the collarbones, and letting my heart sink to the ground. I'm keeping a little bit of engagement in my abdominal area so that I don't completely arch my whole back. My abdominal is a little engaged, even as my tailbone reaches to the sky. So you can also have your head over the edge of the chair, and if you do that, you might want to, again, soften whatever you're on. And so this takes a little bit of the intensity out, but provides more support for my head, which feels nice. And then another way to do this posture is elbows on the chair, arms bent. So fingertips either straight up in a praying mantis position, or hands reaching for the back of the head, behind the neck. And some people really like this version because it can provide opening for the shoulders. Now remember, if as we're holding this starts to get too intense, you definitely want to come out of the pose or simply lessen the intensity, and you can lessen the intensity by changing the position of your legs, moving the location of the arms. I'm going to stay at a place that feels sufficiently intense for me for another 3 to 5 breaths. As you're ready, if your hands were like mine, let them come back down to your chair. Perhaps walk your knees in a little bit. Once more, come upright, stay on your knees upright or on your heels and rest for a moment or two. One more pose. This will be the forward fold that you'll hold while I'll read a little anecdote, a little sleep story to help you relax. So in holding this pose, you can choose, I'll show 2 versions. You can choose a seated or lying version. So we'll start with seated. So the seated version is a seated forward fold. If you have room under the chair, you might choose to keep your legs together. I kind of like more space for my body, so I like to take my legs apart, not too wide, just a little wider than the width of the chair. And then you'll adjust the chair close enough to you so that when you fold forward from the hips, you can rest. Again, it might be your forehead, it might be your arms, some part of your upper body on the chair. Now you can certainly have more height here than I do. You can build this up with blocks or pillows to find the perfect right height for you. So let's see, if I move the chair out a little bit, use my arms, let my head come forward. This feels like a pretty good spot to me. So you see I'm not coming super far forward because I want to have that support. I'm going to hold this pose for a little bit. It's going to be more like 4 to 6 minutes, a little bit longer than we did the other poses. If you prefer to be lying, also a great option. I'll move my pillow to the side. It is still nice to have something to cushion your chair, if it's a chair rather than a couch or a bed. I'm going to scooch a little closer to the chair so that I can put my calves on the chair and rest back in this supported Shavasana. It's also called Constructive Rest pose. And then if you have a pillow, you can certainly take a pillow or small blanket under your head and rest here. And this is still a forward fold because we're getting that fold at the hip crease. So it's a more restful way to do it, yet it's still a forward fold. So take your time to set up in one of those two postures. I'm going to come back up to seated so that I can read our story. And get yourself comfortable. Cover yourself with a blanket if you'd like. You can also use an eye bag. You can darken the room. So take those few moments as we prepare for the story. So as a child, I always really enjoyed Greek myths. And I found the story of Echo and Narcissus. I think this is a nice story to ease into spring. Narcissus is a flower we commonly know as the daffodil, and this is kind of a Greek origin story. Echo was a beautiful nymph, fond of the wood and hills, where she devoted herself to woodland sports. She was a favorite of Diana and attended her in the chase. But Echo had one failing. She was fond of talking, and whether in chat or argument, would have the last word. One day, Juno was seeking her husband, who, she had reason to fear, was amusing himself among the nymphs. Echo, by her talk, contrived to detain the goddess till the nymphs made their escape. When Juno discovered it, she passed sentence upon Echo in these words: "You shall forfeit the use of that tongue which you have cheated me, except for one purpose, that one purpose you are so fond of. Reply. You shall have the last word, but no power to speak first." This nymph saw Narcissus, a beautiful youth, as he pursued the chase upon the mountains. She loved him and followed his footsteps. Oh, how she longed to address him in the softest accents and win him to converse. But it was not in her power. She waited with impatience for him to speak first and had her answer ready. One day the youth, being separated from his companions, shouted aloud, "Who's here?" Echo replied, "Here." Narcissus looked around, but seeing no one, called out, "Come." Echo answered, "Come." As no one came, Narcissus called again, "Why do you shun me?" Echo asked the same question. "Let us join one another," said the youth. The maid answered with all her heart in the same words and hastened to the spot, ready to throw her arms about his neck. He started back, exclaiming, "Hands off! I would rather die than you should have me." "Have me," said she, but it was all in vain. He left her, and she went to hide her blushes in the recesses of the woods. From that time forth, she lived in caves and among mountain cliffs. Her form faded with grief, till at last all her flesh shrank away. Her bones were changed into rocks, and there was nothing left of her but her voice. With that, she is still ready to reply to anyone who calls her, and keeps up her old habit of having the last word. Narcissus's cruelty in this case was not the only instance. He shunned all the rest of the nymphs, as he had done poor Echo. One day, a maiden who had in vain endeavored to attract him uttered a prayer that he might sometime or other feel what it was to love and to meet no return of affection. The avenging goddess heard and granted the prayer. There was a clear fountain with water like silver, to which the shepherds never drove their flocks, nor the mountain goats restored, nor any of the beasts of the forest. Neither was it defaced with fallen leaves or branches, but the grass grew fresh around it, and the rocks sheltered it from the sun. Hither came one day the youth, fatigued with hunting, heated and thirsty. He stooped down to drink, and saw his own image in the water. He thought it was some beautiful water spirit living in the fountain. He stood gazing with admiration at those bright eyes, those locks curled like the locks of Bacchus or Apollo, the rounded cheeks, the ivory neck, the parted lips, and the glow of health and exercise overall. He fell in love with himself. He brought his lips near to take a kiss. He plunged his arms in to embrace the beloved object. It fled at the touch, but returned again after a moment and renewed the fascination. He could not tear himself away. He lost all thought of food or rest, while he hovered over the brink of the fountain, gazing upon his own image. He talked with the supposed spirit. "Why, beautiful being, do you shun me? Surely my face is not one to repel you. The nymphs love me, and you yourself look not indifferent upon me. When I stretch forth my arms, you do the same, and you smile upon me and answer my beckonings and the like." His tears fell into the water and disturbed the image. As he saw it depart, he exclaimed, "Stay, I entreat you. Let me at least gaze upon you, if I may not touch you." With this, and much more of the same kind, he cherished the flame that consumed him, so that by degrees he lost his color, his vigor, and the beauty which formerly had so charmed the nymph Echo. She kept near him, however, and when he exclaimed, "Alas, alas," she answered him with the same words. He pined away and died, and when his shade passed the Stygian river, it leaned over the boat to catch a look of itself in the waters. The nymphs mourned for him, especially the water nymphs, and when they smote their breasts, Echo smote hers also. They prepared a funeral pile and would have burned the body, but it was nowhere to be found. But in its place, a flower, purple within and surrounded by white leaves, which bears the name and preserves the memory of Narcissus. So you are welcome to remain in your pose as long as you're comfortable. I hope that this practice has helped relax your body and your mind. You can check out some of the other sleep stories I have available and other mindful practices which you might find help provide that same sense of ease. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please subscribe to find out more, give me a like and comment, and have a great day.